Hi, James.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Okay, yourself.
Yes, I'm very good. How?
Apologies for that. Yeah, there was some delays at the start when I hit record. When I'm not in the comfort of my studio and I'm traveling, network issues is terrible, man. Terrible.
Well, no problems here. No worries about that. It's all good.
Yeah. So there may be moments, throughout our chat where the screen will freeze. That's what I've been picking up, since I've been on the road. But in the back end of the recording, once it's uploaded, the freezing disappears. So that's
Yeah.
the good thing. That's the good
Yes.
part of this. So how's your day so far?
Oh, my day's been a little rough. My mom passed away yesterday, so I've been dealing with a whole lot of
Oh,
family stuff and trying to make arrangements so we can get there. My mom lives up in New York and I'm in Virginia Beach, so it's
my condolences.
yeah, it's been coming. We know it was coming. It was uh, she was 92. She was 92. So she had a good long life and much love. So it was okay. We you're never really ready, but you are ready. She was ready. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying that because
Wow.
my phones over here might start going off. They're on silent, they're on vibrator, but if they go off, I
Yeah,
may have to pick it up. So depending on who's calling.
sure. But I
I
mean,
hate
you
to start
here,
the show with a fumble.
you showed up. I mean, if you
I hate
yeah.
to start the
If
show
you
off with
wanted
a
to
fumble.
reschedule, I would have been fine with it. Yeah, would have been totally fine if you wanted to reschedule.
Oh no. I said we could do it today because I didn't know she was going to pass away yesterday. And once she passed away, I was like, well, there's going to be some time between you know yesterday and when I need to be there and all that kind of stuff. So I might well do it because it keeps me active. That can't sit around thinking about the good
Yeah,
time, the bad time. Did all that last night, that and drinking. So I'm sober and ready to go.
yeah, sure.
Where
Wow,
are you at in
this
South
changes
Africa?
the whole.
Yeah. Where you at in
Sorry.
South Africa?
At the moment, I'm in Durban.
Okay. My editor lives in
Yeah.
Springs. My editor lives in
Sorry,
Springs.
where?
My editor lives in
Springs.
Springs. Yeah. In Springs, South Africa.
Springs, as in Springs, in Johannesburg, the
Johannesburg.
province
Well,
Johannesburg.
yeah. That way.
Yeah. So I'm actually from Johannesburg.
Okay.
That's where I'm from. Yeah, that's where my studio is. That's where I'm set up. And now I'm in Durban, for 2 weeks. This is the second week going. So yeah, I'm familiar with Springs. Wow. So you have an editor in Springs.
Yes.
How did that happen? Let's start off with that. How did that happen for you?
Well, I kind of met her on Facebook. We was, chatting around between different people and everything, and she liked editing. She was very interested in editing. She writes romances. Uh, no, her books are upstairs. Okay, I have pictures of some of the books behind me, but hers is upstairs in
Okay.
my other room and in my living room. So I read her book, and she was a
Yeah.
romance writer, and I read her book, and I really liked her writing and her writing style. And I asked her if she would be my editor for the RockHill Publishing. I would publish her books, and so
Wow.
there you go.
The
That was over
world
10 years
is
ago.
small.
Yeah,
The world is small. And what's her name?
Athena Paris. So if you look her up,
Wow. That's someone I should connect. It's so crazy, in this world of podcasting, you know, 100% of my guests or anyone that I interact with, even with my agency, with my record label, it's all international.
Yeah.
And here I am in a conversation, with you, and you have an editor in South Africa who I don't even know about, and we have never connected.
Well, it's a
That's
small world.
crazy.
It's
That's
a small
crazy.
world that's very, very big.
Yeah. I'm actually going to throw an idea out there, something to consider. I know you have a lot of, family responsibilities going on at the moment. But, when the time is right, we should actually get all three of us on a podcast together.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
because I
Yeah.
would love to know, I do my best, to interact with creatives locally and to present opportunities to them. And I want to actually, because you're dealing with someone that's so close by to where I am, I would like to get to know her, what's her mandate. Maybe we can collab, to get more creators involved, bring them onto the show, down that road. So
Yeah.
something to consider. Something to consider. Wow. I was not expecting that. To
I'll
be
let her
honest, I
know.
was not.
Yeah. I'll let her know and we can plan something. It'll be really good because you're on the same time zone as she is.
Yeah. Bring her on, meet up, have a chat, check where
Yeah.
each party is at the moment. And I mean, that's the mandate of this podcast alone, to connect people, to educate creators out there. So why not bring it home as well? All three of us on the show just sharing our story,
Yeah. I
what
would
we
like
can
that.
do, to
Yep.
to push the mandate. Um, well, sure. Psychologically, right now, I'm just thinking about, your mother passing away. You're on the show. I can't even imagine, what you're feeling right now, and to be here. But, to see you so, there's so many people who take these situations, the one road of, seeing death as, my honest opinion as, it's the end of life, it's the end of it all. But I see it as the beginning of a new life for the person that's passed away. They're entering a new. There's different
Move on.
beliefs how you go,
Yes.
but for me, it doesn't really stop there.
Yeah.
It continues. It continues after that. Then we celebrate. The memories, as you mentioned, the good times. Let's
Yeah.
focus on the good times. That we had with that person, the memories. And I mean, at that age, that was a long, fulfilling life for her.
4 generations. 4 generations. So,
Ye-
you know, you
Wow,
can't ask,
just look
you
at
can't
that.
ask for more.
Just look at that.
Yeah, you can't ask for more. And the last time I seen her was a couple of weeks ago. I was up there to see her and everything, and we sat. We had a good long talk. She asked
Yeah.
She asked me about what I was doing with my writing. And so I told her about the latest book I was working on and everything, and told her the whole story. She said, well, I have nothing better to do. So I gave her the whole story and everything. And she said,
Yeah.
what? How did you come up with that? How did you come up with that story? Because I wanted to write a horror story for so long, and I haven't
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
able to really get a good idea in my head that I could make a novel out of. I wrote a couple of short stories and things like that in a horror vein, but I love Stephen King. I love Edgar Allan Poe, and so to actually write a horror novel, though, I never had an idea that I could flush out into a full length novel. So I finally got one, and because I wrote a horror story for an anthology for children. it was for
Yeah.
it was a charity for children, sick children and stuff like that. So these people asked me to be part of that, and I was like, okay. And I wrote that story, and that sprang that burst the dam, and then it was like, okay, now I got an idea. Now I'm going to write this, and I wrote this horror story. And my mom was sitting there, and I told her the whole story, and she asked me, where'd you come up with that idea? And I was like, oh, well, I'm not really crazy about vampires, but it's had something to do with vampires and witches. And I was like, I didn't want it just to be a regular vampire story based on, the regular tropes. So,
Yeah. 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 Wow.
and
And
my
how did you
witches
take
come
it?
from, yeah, my witches come from Scotland, and from Africa. So two different
Okay.
people. Druids on one side and African healers and African witchcraft from the other side. So it's kind of like they come and they meet in the middle in Germany of all places. So it's a crazy story, but it's like I was so glad that I was able to tell her that and communicate that with her, in these final weeks.
Yeah. So what's your take, just off topic, but it wasn't how I ideally wanted to start off, but what's your take when you brought in the whole witchcraft from the African side of things? What's your take on it personally for you?
I had to do a bit of reading into it to see, because here in America we have voodoo, and in New Orleans and Louisiana, that's a mix of African, Spanish, Indian influences, and that's what
Yeah,
voodoo was made from. That's where we get voodoo from. So it was like, okay, let's peel back and go back to the African, and the African is more nature driven, right? More in line with natural and the natural world. And so my idea was, okay, magic would be the same no matter where you came from. The only difference is the language you speak. But magic is, if you believe in magic, magic would be this holistic type of thing that any culture would have an ability to create magic and do magic. The only difference is the language in which we use to invoke the powers. And so that's why you come with the Druids from one side, and you come with the African, not witch doctor, because that's a bad terminology, but spellcasters. Let's just call it spellcasters. Yeah. And so,
well, I mean, it has its good and its bad,
Yeah.
And why I wanted to just get your opinion on it, because myself, living in South Africa, coming from Africa, it does exist. It's out there. There's the good and then there's the bad. And for me, personally speaking, it's just how you actually, take it in for yourself, because there's, thousands of people that are so paranoid about it. But my feeling on it is that if you allow it psychologically, if you allow it into your aura, into your personal life, then of course it's going to affect you, in a negative way. We live in a world with a lot of envy, with a lot of jealousy. Sometimes people who are good people but find themselves in bad situations, can use this magic, can use this witchcraft against you in a bad way, especially when you're standing at the edge of that cliff. I see it happening a lot. I've got, knowledge on it. Spirituality plays a huge role in my life. But, I choose to go about it in a positive manner, not in a negative manner. So.
And it's funny because you hear stories from different places in the world, Africa being one of them, about zombies and the witchcraft that people cast on people, and all these things. And it's the same story no matter where you're from. It's the same belief and the same belief systems that's why I say it's universal, because the same story about somebody being a zombie or something like that in New Orleans or in Europe or in Asia, in Africa, it's always the same story, just told in a different way.
100%.
So
that's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. Couldn't have said that better. But thanks for sharing that. Today, but we'll jump on to Pegasus, a bit later. But when I was reading, about your book today, I'm like, I want to get onto Pegasus. Yes. How do I get onto Pegasus? I was like, I want to get on there, because the reality of the matter is, the universe is much more bigger than, the average person actually knows. For me, there's no like, okay, here's the world, here's heaven, here's hell, here's the surrounding planets, and that's where it ends. There's much more to it.
Yes.
But we'll get on that. We want to start off with actually, is just, about you, your background history, where it all started for you as a creative. I know you have a computer programming history as well. So let's start there, let's get to know you personally, where it all started for you as a creative, because we're talking about computer programming and now a phenomenal author. You transition into a phenomenal author. So where did it all start for you?
Well, it probably started me being a writer first, way back in the days with Marvel Comics and everything, where I started reading. When you're reading Marvel Comics, they're series. So you read the one, and then the next month, the next comic come out, and next month, So it's a continuing story, and we would like draw out the characters and all that kind of stuff. And I always wanted to figure out what was the next storyline going to be, what was the next comic would be as you're going through these things and everything. And Stanley, another one of my heroes, and so he built a great universe, and a great system, and so many different things, and science based. Some of it, a lot of it was science based. The thing with nuclear power, the fallout of what will happen if you would eradicate it, with radiation, give some people superpowers, give other people other powers, and how you use those powers, determines the type of person you are. So just having power doesn't do anything for you. It's how you use it. And so I started off writing in that vein, and science. I grew up in the science world. I mean, with the Apollo and the Gemini missions, and we're racing to the moon and all that kind of stuff. So I grew up in a scientific vein, and science was always one of my favorite subjects, because in science and science fiction, anything is possible. The possibilities are unlimited. And at that time, people was always talking about, there's no other planets out there. This is it. We have this thing, and these 7, 9 planets, how many ever you want to count them as, this is it, and this is the universe. And as we got better instruments and better technology, we found out this ain't it. The universe is much more vast. And even if it wasn't as vast as we now know it to be, there had to be other planets. There had to be other civilizations. There had to be other life out there. So being earthbound and even looking at the life on Earth, you see how varied it is and how diverse it is and everything. It got to be more to it than just what we have here. And so that's what led me to writing Pegasus. That, and of course the idea of if we were ever going to have a nuclear war, and I was like, no, we're never going to have an all-out nuclear war because we have no place to go. So, but once we find some place to go, all bets are off. The same thing that happens now with people going from place to place, when they run out of resources here, they pick up and they move over there. Well, all right, we've already been all the way around the globe. So we have no place else to go here. So the next place is out there. And as soon as we find another place, and when I wrote Pegasus, this was back in the 80s. When I wrote Pegasus, we haven't found another planet yet. But of course, we have now found planets, and even planets that we feel are in the habitable zones of their own stars. Like I said, we found out that the universe is much, much larger than what we could even have imagined at any particular time, and it's probably even more vast than what we can even imagine now, with multiverses and all that kind of stuff. All these different things that true scientists are working on. Me, I just pick things in here and there, and makes nice stories out of them.
TV is our reality. Sometimes we watch a series or we watch a movie, we think, okay, it's all fiction, it's all made up, all this doesn't exist. You mentioned Marvel. I'm also a Marvel fan, but I grew up in the era of watching the Marvel movies, and following it. And if you miss one, you're never going to understand what the next one is all about. Especially when
Yes.
Marvel branches out into a different character, and then something happens within the movie about that character, but it's linked to the Avengers. You're like, huh, what's happening here now?
That's
But
how it
when
was
you
in the
watch Marvel, you also mentioned,
yeah. That's
sorry.
how it was in the comic books. One comic book sprung another character into another comic book. This guy was a bad guy in this comic book, and then you find out, oh, he's actually a good guy. That kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's building world on top of world, people on top of people, and it's branching out like a spider web into all directions. That's what you gotta love about
100%.
Marvel. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's exactly what, we all, love about Marvel. But, what we pick up in Marvel for me is a reality. It's the truth. It's there. It exists. You know, People will
Yes.
call us crazy. You know what you're talking about. That's because you've just been so brainwashed that you haven't looked, further than your nose, and that's on you. That's on you. While you were talking, I'm thinking about Elon Musk and his mandate to take people to Mars. You
Yeah.
know, are we going down similar roads here when we're talking about Pegasus?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. In Pegasus, the idea of Pegasus is we scoop up all the good parts of the Earth, and they're going to take it to another planet and settle another planet. It's a one-way trip because the nearest planet to us is 4 light years away. The actual that we know is livable. I mean, Mars, we can manipulate some of it. It's close enough that we can, build our bases. We can build um, satellites. You can build, space stations, all that kind of stuff. But if you really want to live and inhabit someplace, you kind of need a planet. You gotta need,
Yeah.
something to set your base on. So yeah, Mars will be a stopping point. But when you talk about transforming Mars, and this happens in Pegasus, when you talk about transforming Mars into an actual viable planet, that's a whole lot of work. It would be much easier to find a planet that's already inhabitable and move there. Bring everything you want from Earth to that planet. And once you can hit the speed of light, at least you can get to some of the nearer stars, like Alpha Centauri. The Alpha Centauri system is 4 light years away. We now found there's Centauri B, which is a planet in an inhabitable zone around one of the stars in Alpha Centauri. So it is possible. You have to be able to travel at light speed, or at least very close to it, because if you can't travel at this particular point in time, it would take thousands of years to get there. But if you can hit
Yeah.
the speed of light or close enough to it, then it's only 4 years away. That's very doable. You know, there's stars within 25 light years of Earth that perhaps have habitable planets around them. And so it the main problem with space is it's so vast, and until
Yeah.
you can reach light speeds, you're not going to be able to get very far. Seeing that Star Trek taught us, you can go anywhere as long as you can beat the speed of light, as long as you can warp
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're working on it. I don't think it's impossible. At one point they thought breaking the sound barrier was impossible, but we did it. We built the engines. It's just a matter of engineering.
So, what's the main problem now with Earth that's the direction that we are going into now?
The main problem with Earth is that we have run out of places. That when you look at the Earth, most of the population of Earth lives around the outer portion of the continents, because as you move further inland, you move away from water and move away from the resources that we need. Now, the smart thing to do would be to build the viaducts and everything and desalination and bring the water to where the people are. Because there's a lot of vast land on Earth that people don't live on because it's too far away from, resources that you need to live.
Resources, yeah.
Yeah. But people don't think about building the resources. They think about moving away to the next place and using the resources there. So now like I said, we had gone all around the world in every different direction, and we now need to concentrate on the idea of this is our home. This is everybody actually has an equal say and an equal part in this world. No one's going to get more than the other because it's just not going to work out that way. So we need to work together to make the place livable for everybody. There's no reason for famine. There's no reason for energy shortages. There's no reason for war. And war is the idea that, hey, I'll kill you and take what you have, rather than I work with you and together we will have more. When you get out of that mindset is, I have to get all of this. And the thing with Elon Musk is, he's off in La La Land somewhere thinking, I'm going to leave here and go to Mars. Okay, but what are you going to do on Mars? You can't live there. If you could transform Mars into a livable planet, you can fix the problems we have here much easier, and that's the whole holdup. People don't think about fixing what we have and making it livable. They think about, I'll just go to the next place, or I'll take what they have. If I don't have enough here, I'll go take that guy's stuff.
Yeah, 100%. All these points that you just made about what us as humanity needs to fix here, I just don't see it happening. I don't even see it happening in the years to come. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. We're not making the planet livable. It's chaotic at the moment. There's more disputes, there's more fighting than anything else, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. From a macro all the way down to a micro. You go into your smaller communities today, the same thing is happening. We can't live together. We can't live in harmony together.
And that's the basis behind Pegasus. You can't run away from yourself. Your problems are going to go with you wherever you go. Humanity's problems are going to follow humanity into the stars. If you don't solve those problems here and now, you're just going to carry them with you to wherever you go. And
Exactly.
So the idea is you can't run away from yourself. This is who you are. You have to deal with who you are. And we can be better people. We can be a better race of people, the human race, if we all decided to be that better race of people and not follow our worst instincts and not fall to the idea of I can be better than him or I deserve more than that one. And these type of things that we use to divide people. And it's easier to divide people than it is to unite them.
But that's how we keep the powers of the world alive.
Yes,
divide and
that's how
conquer.
people stay in power, by dividing. Divide and conquer has always been the mantra of those who wish to be in power.
And the thing is, we live in a world where we're driven more by emotion than logical, pragmatic thinking. We're driven by emotion,
Yeah.
And that's what's causing more harm than anything else because we're letting our emotions get in the way instead of actually just sitting down, evaluating the situation, taking a full deep breath, inhale, exhale, and be like, okay, how can I handle this situation in a more civilized manner that's going to bring peace to both sides? It's just not happening. It's not happening. So if you were in a room right now, let me think of some sort of summit, say a G20 summit. What would you tell, the world right now? on what we can do to make our condition more livable.
The two things.
You know, they're not going to listen, but what would you say?
No, you tell them anyway. But the two things we need water. So we need to control and make water available around the world. And we need non-pollutant energy. And this could be done simply with renewable energies. And there's multiple forms of renewable energy. There's only so much oil in the ground. There's only so much coal in the ground. We can't create oil. We can't create coal. When we use it up, we're done. So, but we have solar energy. You have geothermal energy. You have water power. You have all these different types of energies that you can use. And if you put your mind to it, you can find other ways, other energies that we haven't even thought about yet. But you have to get to the idea that it's not money that drives the world. It's the useful use of resources that drive the world. And, you know, we need farmland. We need energy. We need water. We need climate that we can live with, you know, and we can control these things. The one thing about we're the only people, the only species that can see far enough into our future to know what the future brings. There's no other animal that I know of on this planet that thinks in those terms. But yet we blind ourselves to those facts. We can control our own environment. You know, other animals, other species, they control their environment only into the point where they can use up the thing. They can't go off and plant a plant over here when there's no more feasible planting soil here. They don't do that. They just move to the next spot. We have to stop thinking about moving to the next spot and start thinking about making sure that the planet is renewable in all forms and all aspects. And we can do it because we have the intellect that allows us to see these things as they are happening. There's no other species that I know of that does that.
This is some powerful points. There's actually going to be a second email I'll send you, you know, in the next 2 weeks or so, once you're done, you know, with your family responsibilities. There's an author out in Canada, Don Sawyer. So he was also a guest on the podcast as well. We hit it off. Of course, you know, we touched on his book, we touched on his creative journey, but the conversation was so diverse. We went down so many roads that we came back to each other after that recording and we were like, we need to start a podcast and we need to talk about these global issues. But the podcast mustn't just be like the two of us. We need to create like a global panel. And that's exactly what we did and we launched last November. You know, so we bring in individuals from all across the world onto the panel to talk about what we can do. Now, the main mandate of, you know, the panel, the podcast itself is that the points you have mentioned is, you know, the first thing that we need to do is we need to bring humanity together. You know, we need to understand that we all one. It doesn't matter what's your cultural background, which country you're from, what's your religious beliefs, we all one and we need to, you know, unify. You know, that's the main mandate. So in order to now action your points with what you have just mentioned, we first need to come together as one, you know, in order for us to do it. So, you know, I would love to send you an invite, you know, to join us on that panel to bring out these points, you know, because, you know, using the channels, you know, one being podcasts at the moment and getting the reach out to humanity, you know, is why we're doing this, you know, so we can get that reach out. Because we're not going to get all of these brilliant ideas, you know, coming from you as well, you know, via mainstream. It's not going to happen. So one thing Don always says, like, you know, what we're doing with this panel is so ambitious because you have to keep in mind we're going up against mainstream, which is hard. You know, it's hard. So I'm like, I know it's ambitious. It's an ambitious goal, what we're attempting to do. But I rather try and attempt, and push it out there than sit back and do nothing.
Yes.
And I'm sure you can agree with that. I'd rather say, okay, I tried. I tried to get this message out there to people. I tried to get this message out there to the masses. And sitting back, doing nothing and hoping for better days, and complaining.
Yeah.
Let me blame the government. Let me blame the president. Let me blame my neighbor,
Yeah.
instead of me saying, okay, you know what can I do today in my personal capacity? What can I do today to make the planet
And
more
voicing
livable?
your ideas.
So I would love to bring you on.
Yes, I would love to be on that panel with you, because voicing an idea and giving the people an insight as to, oh yeah, that is a good idea. We could do that, and that's how things get done. That's how things get built. It's not one guy saying you need to do this. It's more like you put the idea out there, and people pick it up and they build with that idea.
Yeah.
And that's. And this is one way of getting the ideas out. I'll be glad to be on the panel with you. I would be honored.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, in the next week or so, I'll just send you the email, or bringing, the editor onto another podcast and then join us on the panel as well. So it happens once a month, but, the email will have all the details. It'll give you, what the mandate is, what it's about. But I know Dawn is going to be excited to have someone like you actually, come on to it. Like what you were saying about, getting the idea out to people. I don't know where, how you feel about this, but getting people to actually go and do it, man, that's a crazy part. It's like you can give someone all the facts. You can tell them what to do, how to go about it, but they'll still sit there.
Yep. Well,
Right?
those who will still sit there will sit there, and those who will see a call to action will take action. And all you can do is put it out there. Yeah. The old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But, the same thing goes.
Yeah, exactly. It's how I see it. It's Yeah, it's like it's the creative space as well. We're living in this independent era. Whether you're a musician, whether you're an independent author, there's not so much red tape any longer, like how it used to be. You don't need your mainstream record labels anymore. You don't need all your big publishers anymore. We've passed that. Now we're in the independent space. It's decentralized. You can take control of your career. And myself personally, as a consultant, an artist will come in to see me and be like, okay, this is the issue I'm facing at the moment. And I'll be like, okay, this is what you can go do. This is what I can provide to you for free, besides the podcast, where you're getting all the dope information that you could ever possibly need from phenomenal creators all around the world. But this is what I can provide to you for free to go and do to get started. And 1 month later, nothing's been done. And then they're sulking, because they're not living their dream, they're not living their best life. And then they just, stick with a normal average 9-to-5 job. And then, the psychological aspect of it is what I try to fix at the start. Because the thing is, you go into adulthood, especially if you're dealing with, creatives in their 20s or even in their teens, I don't want them to go into their 30s, their 40s being miserable and unhappy about their life. And then it affects their marriage and then they're getting divorced. So I've witnessed those things happening. And what I attempt to do is try to, fix that psychological aspect first before it gets there. Because if you are not going to live a fulfilling, happy life, you're going to face these issues and it's going to be so subconscious because you're not even going to know where it's coming from, but it's coming from deep inside because you never fulfill your life purpose.
Yes.
That's my take on it. So if you're just chasing the paper now, aka money, you're never really going to find fulfillment. And I try to get this message through. So you're in the creative space, you can live on your own terms, but it's going to require a lot of work, time, and self-investment. And if you're not willing to do those things and play it out. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years. You're not going to live your best life. So you got a choice to make for yourself. You can either go down this road, which is going to take years to build your dream life. It's going to be challenging. You're going to have a lot of dark moments. But I can promise you one thing. You're still going to have a smile on your face when you wake up in the morning. Instead of not going down this road and waking up in the morning miserable.
Yes.
I thought, let me also just push that out there.
And, it's like all these people who look at other people's success and they go, wow, that person's an overnight success. Yeah. Over 20 years of nights, he's an overnight 100%. Success that only took 20 years in the making,
Yeah.
But you only heard about him yesterday, but he's been working at this for, a decade or more, and so
exactly.
When people see these things, everybody thinks the immediate. Oh, that person just one day woke up and bam, there it was. No, that person, he was stacking bricks after bricks after bricks, and now he has a house. No one just has boom, one brick and I got a house. No, it didn't happen like that.
You weren't around when he or she was waking up at 3, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning. You weren't there when Kino and James was in a podcast. Kino himself, 9 p.m. at night, pushing it, doing it. You weren't there.
Yeah.
You weren't there. So if you're not willing, as I said, to put in that self-investment in time, it's okay if you don't have the money, if you don't have the capital to get going, get started. It's okay, but time, that's on you.
Yeah.
That's on you. It's like people around the world, when they talk about why do I want to go to America, and I ask them the question, why do you want to go to America? Because I want to live the American dream. Now, the American dream is something that's flooded the whole world, right?
Yeah.
If we look, even in my generation, it's flooded the whole world. And I will ask them, okay, why do you want to go to America? Oh, no, because I want to live the American dream. Yeah, but what does it entail? Do you know what it entails? Yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to make loads of money. And, I'm going to become super rich. And, I'm going to live the life. And I'm like, do you even know how the American dream was founded? And he'd be like, no. I said, that's your starting point first, because the American dream started off by building two types of capital, financial capital and spiritual capital, and both needs to align with each other. Oh, what's spiritual capital? Exactly my point. Well, are you in alignment? Do you even know what you're chasing? But you're chasing it.
They see the American dream from, like I say, the overnight success. They see that. They don't see the other side of that, where that person started from, living in a ghetto, living in this, working 3 jobs to get enough money to just get this far up the hill. They only see, as Reagan once said, the shiny house on the hill or whatever. They see They don't see all of that mud and rock and dirt that person crawled through to get up to the shiny beacon on the hill. And when people talk about, we come to America. Yes, America is still that land of opportunity, but that land of opportunity takes a lot of hard work, and there are many people who come here and work hard to get there. And people who are born here resent the fact that, oh, this guy came and he did. Well, you know what that guy did when he came here with nothing in his pocket? He went out and worked. He went out and built. He sacrificed. He came here with the idea that I want to be something, I want to have something. And he worked that.
Yeah.
You've been here all your life, and you think they owe you this life. They don't owe you that life. No one asked you to be born. No one told you that when you were born, you were going to have this. They said in the Declaration of Independence, it's the pursuit of happiness. It's not happiness. You're guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have to go out and get it. It's not given to you. It's not guaranteed.
You have to put in the work. I mean, just what you said there, something that actually happens globally when I look at it, because even in South Africa, South Africans get so pissed off when a foreigner from another African country, makes their way into South Africa and actually building something, for their life. And they get pissed off about it. And I'm sure, you've heard about xenophobia attacks, all those sort of stuff that happens. But the reality of the matter is, as you just said, that person has come here and they are putting in the time. And when I talk about time, they're up at 5 in the morning to go to wherever they need to work. And they're starting off like as a general worker somewhere in some factory. And they only getting home at 9, 10 at night. They're not even working, oh yeah, by law, I'm supposed to only work, 9 hours and get 1 hour lunch break. They're not working according to those laws. They're putting in the time and they're climbing that ladder. So it's entitlement, because now, as you said, someone born in America and then someone born in South Africa, so, it's entitlement. Oh, because I'm American, because I'm South African, I'm entitled to that. But it's not the case. Hence why I say, the American dream has flooded its way across the globe. Those values, those principles, intact, it means something, and you have to really understand that, you have to put in the work. You have to put in the work to get to where you want to be, as a creative or anyone else.
Yes.
So once again,
That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Unless you're born with the money, you have to work and make it. And even people who are born with the money, they still have to work or else they lose it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, this is when people say when they listen to the podcast, what they love most is how it just branches out, completely off topic. But it's the foundation, it's the foundation. You know what it took you to lead, into releasing the book Pegasus. You know what it took. You know what it took from you as well. The sacrifice, the discipline,
Yes.
to keep yourself alive, to boost your self-esteem, when no one believed in you, but you believed in you. This is it, that's that spiritual capital. So I love that, I can have these sort of conversations because it's the foundation of anyone's creative career. So the book Pegasus, don't give it all away, but just to describe it, give a bit about what's in the book. What would you say?
It is an emotional roller coaster ride between two people who are out to find the dream of living a better life. And like I said, the message behind it is you can't run away from yourself. So even though they have this dream of having this better life and everything, they also don't want to be alone in the universe. So it's an emotional roller coaster in that they're trying to build this better life, but they also realize they have to teach others what does it actually mean to be. They have to learn for themselves as well as teach others what does it actually mean to be human. What does humanity actually mean? And you can't escape it. You can't leave it behind. You have to embrace it, you have to live it, and you have to make sure it survives.
Zach and Zuri, the characters.
Yes. Zach and Zuri, my two great characters. Zuri comes from South Africa, or she comes from Africa because in the near future, all the African nations become one country, still with their individual thing, like I call it the United States of Africa. And they become this one country. But of course, it's not a matter of just, we kicked out all the white people and now we're the United States of Africa and we're all happy. No, we are not all happy because they still want what they consider Africa to be. And these other people still want their version of Africa. And you have people from all over. Because see, in America, everybody used to say, oh, go back to Africa. Okay, where? Where am I going back to? What civilization? What nature, what culture am I supposed to be going back into? Because they're not all the same, and they're not all happy with each other, and so it's not one place. That's why I never say I'm African American, because saying that you're African American is not saying you're from anywhere. You know, Africa is a big continent, so where in Africa are you? You know, I just say I'll just say I'm an American. I leave it at that. Yeah.
That's it. That's the first time I actually heard someone say it that way. You know, say it that way, which makes sense. It does make sense. It does make sense. Okay, thank you for explaining. Okay, you read the book. So it's a futuristic story. For me, you know, there's that dotted line again between fiction and non-fiction. You know, that dotted line again, you know. Someone may read it and be like, okay, no, this is just like a cool story to actually read. And I'm like, nah, this is simple. This is actually there. It's happening. It's the reality. It's the future. You know, so where do you want to go? You know, and let's touch on RockHill Publishing. So you got your own publishing company. You know, how did that start?
Okay.
And what's the mandate with that?
Well, because I wrote Pegasus back in the 80s, and I wrote Killer with a Heart back in the 80s. And of course, I was trying to publish it the traditional way and going through all the, well, you need an agent first, and you need this first, and, you know, all these other people who was up there, you know, and it's always the same thing. It all depends on if the person likes what you did. You know, you have to find that right person who likes what you did, who's willing to say, okay, I'll put this up. But also, I became a programmer. I love writing programs. I love computers and everything. And I was working in document processing. I was working in all kinds of different word processing type of things. And I realized, hey, I can publish books. I can make the books myself. You know, it's no magic involved. It's just a process. And once you learn the process, you can do it yourself. And because with the internet and with desktop publishing and all these other things that came around at that time and in later years, it became easier for me to actually publish my own stuff. And then I would be at book shows and I'd be at places and people would ask me, hey, how did you get published? How did you do this? And I realized I need to help other people publish. I need to help other independent writers become published. And I can just be one of those people who read a story and say, you know, yes, this is a good story. I like it. I'll publish it. You know, because that's what any other publishing house does. They read a story and they go, oh, you know what? This is a good story. I'll publish it. Now, with the bigger publishers' houses, they got a lot of salaries to pay. They got a lot of mouths to feed. So they're reading the story with not whether I like it or not, but whether it will make me money.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of mouth to feed. It's only me and Athena. So between the two of us, we don't need a lot. I can take chances on stuff that I like, that I see as intelligent, that I see as visionary, and that I see authors who are really out there trying to make it. And I can give them a leg up. I can give them a start, and they can go from there. I got a couple of authors who have written series, and you know, each book is better than the last. You know, I have people who wrote one book and it's fantastic. You know, people love it. So, and you have the eye. You know, you read something and you say, "Wow, that's interesting. I bet you someone else will like that." The same way when you write a story, you write it for yourself first, and if you like it, you know somebody else will like it, and then you can go ahead and publish it and put it out there, and people will like it. It's just a matter of getting it out.
So if I'm an up and coming author and I'm listening to the podcast right now, and when I get myself published, I can reach out to you.
Yes, you go to my website, RockHillPublishing.com, and we open up the website usually around this time. We haven't opened it up this year. We may not open it up this year because we already have things in the works that we're working on. But when we open up the website, we accept submissions just like any other publishing house. The only thing is you don't need an agent. You don't need anything else. When this query window opens, follow the rules on the query window, send your information in, send your stuff in. We read it, we evaluate it, we give you an evaluation of your work. So if it's good, if we like it, if it's something for us, we'll publish it. If it's not for us, for whatever reason, we let you know, well, this is why it doesn't work for us. And this is what you might want to do to improve it or to be able to bring it back to us. See, that's one of the things that I used to get a lot of, which is rejection notices. And as a writer, you got to build up that thick skin because you're going to get rejected and you can't take it personally. Now, you get 7 out of 10 rejection notices. They all say your story had multiple plot holes. I couldn't follow your ideas, all this kind of stuff. Take that into account. If 7 out of 10 people are telling you that, those 7 people are right. The 3 people who tell you it's wonderful, but I don't want it, they're not giving you any help. Take the 7 people who tell you why it wasn't acceptable and work on it and improve it. Because one thing about writing, you can always go back and edit. You can always improve.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, as your work continues, always gets better and better, no matter what you do. In life, it'll always get better as long as you're working on your craft.
That's not quite true. People who have talent will always be able to improve. If you don't have talent, and people can't teach talent, it's like saying, I always wanted to play guitar. Guess what? I have no musical abilities. So no matter how many times I strum that guitar or whatever, I can't play the guitar. And it doesn't matter how hard or how much I try, I don't have the talent. But if you have talent, you can always improve. You may have talent in something else.
There has to be passion behind it.
But you might be a great drawer. You might be a great something else. You have, in this life, you have to find the talents that you have and then use them. Make them grow. Everybody has a talent. It's your job to find what that talent is and then make it work.
There has to be passion behind it. Your heart has to be in the right place. You're correct in what you say. Or let me rephrase, what I was trying to say, because what you're saying is 100% correct. You have to be talented in that, whatever it may be, whether it be author, whether it be a musician. Your heart has to be in the right place.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's, I'm going to use now, the music industry as an example, or just as being a DJ. Okay. Myself being, a professional DJ myself, and I remember the era, when we hosted our own, nightlife events and so on, and DJs would reach out to be like, I would love to, come and have a slot, and, you would present the opportunity to them. And they'll appear on the first night, they will do their thing, and then that's it, you never hear from them again. And then when you're online, they no longer doing it. They're just no longer doing it anymore because they were not driven by passion. There was, you could say, okay, they were talented in certain ways, how they were doing it, but it wasn't backed up by passion and heart. And that's why they no longer be involved in the entertainment scene.
Yes, absolutely. And like you say, you have to have heart. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have the heart to go out and try. And then lastly, you have to have the talent behind it. There had to be some knowledge of what you're doing. In all the usual places, you can find all of my authors at RockHillPublishing.com, and of course Amazon and all the usual places. So go to RockHillPublishing.com first if you want to look me up, and any of my other authors that's out there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You see, right there was no interruptions at all. It's perfect. Perfect.
Yep.
But of course, now, after I end the recording, I'll see exactly, what, was recorded correctly in the back end, and then I'll just have to edit afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. But James, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and for being patient.
Oh, thank you.
Really patient.
Oh, I'm in computers. I know what this is like.
I remember once I had an author from Canada, and the same thing happened. And I think the conversation was also about 1 hour 30 minutes. And then instead of what happened to us here, I ended up going off the screen, but I could still view her, but she couldn't view me. But she was so patient, eh? She was just sitting there, she was smiling, and then, she took a few deep breaths, and then I came back on, and I was like, wow, thanks for being so patient.
That's why.
And she was, this happens, don't worry.
That's why I muted my camera and my microphone. I was like, okay, I'm just sitting there going,
Thanks, man. Thanks for being so cool. James, once again, thank you for coming on, and once again, condolences with regards to your mother. And all the best, with
Thank you.
what's to come, after that. Yeah, I wish you and your family all the best through this period. And we are definitely going to chat again. So, I'll give it about a week, and then I'll reach out to you. I'll keep Mickey in the loop as well. And we take it from there.
Yep. I appreciate it, and I'll be looking forward to it. It was a fun time. It was good.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If you eliminate all the interruptions we've had due to the network, it was a powerful conversation. There's a lot of gold that was said in this conversation, and I appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your dopeness, your love, your passion with the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll chat to you soon. I'll chat to you in the next week again.
All right. Looking forward to it.
All right, thanks.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye, James. Okay, bye.